Hey kids, howdy, and welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. It is December 8th. We are talking about the second week in December. And, I've been getting my handouts ready for the Astro Overview for next year, right? I've got a lot of handouts coming. I just want to give you all as much support as possible for next year. But one of the things that I've been thinking about, partly because I'm going through, some of my own personal emotional stuff, but I'm also watching the commentary on social media. It's like if I prepare what the year ahead is going to look like from the big sort of sweeping transits and cycles and ebbs and flows, it's never going to prepare us for what the freaking personal planets will do from time to time.
Right.
I could do that, but it would take me like 3 weeks to prepare and 7 hours to deliver. I mean, and given the fact that everybody hung out in Scorpio for a bit and then, kept triggering the outer planets, in their before and after signs as we moved into last, week's full moon. This week is also squeezy on like the personal planet level. And so we'll talk more about that when we get there. Meanwhile, my two little class announcements are maybe three. One is, of course, the Astro Overview that I keep talking about that I do live on New Year's Day. But of course, you don't have to join me New Year's Day. So just sign up for your seat for that. You can get a little preview of next year on Thursday of this week, the 11th, where I'll be doing a little guest spot on Michael Sandler's YouTube channel. I do this with him several times a year, but we always get together in December and talk about next year's astrology as well. Not in a comprehensive way like my forecast, but that's also the day that my first class of 2026 is available to sign up for. And I've decided to put my Jumpstart Your Spiritual Practice as my first class for next year.
That's
because
great.
I've been saying for 2 years, it's like what you're going to need is your spiritual practice, putting it front and center. And while I've taught this class before and it's always ongoing and available as a recording, I haven't done it in a couple of years. All of this feels like I've said this already, but it might have been a conversation I had with someone and, my Swiss cheese brain can't distinguish whether I said it to, a person or on the podcast. But yeah, it's been a couple of years and they were transformative years for me. Not that there'll be new spiritual practices, but I'm inhabiting them so differently that I'm excited to teach it from a different place.
I also love that you're putting it out as the first class because everyone's, looking like, new year, like what is this year going to be for me? And I think changing or starting your spiritual practice is a lovely way to begin the year.
I agree, because whatever the year is going to be, it's going to be that more gracefully if you have a way of lighting yourself up with a groove of energy that is available each day.
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's been something that's helped me recently. Like,
say more.
Okay, I'm a person who deals with a lot of anxiety, and you've known me to have a spiritual practice in the past, and in the past few years, I've just wanted to deal with things on my own rather than turning to a spiritual community to help me figure life out and navigate. So I'm trying to do that within myself. And with that, I've kind of lost my meditation practice and my prayer practice. Of course, it comes in and out every once in a while. And so I've had heightened anxiety in the last few months.
Well,
and
yes.
as people might have been experiencing.
Yes.
And last week, I just took a moment, and
Mm.
when I was flying, over Thanksgiving, I took a moment in the airport and I was like, okay, what if I just sat here? And it wasn't, okay, we're meditating now, or
Right,
let's start a
right.
practice. It was just, let's turn within. I
That's
think I
right.
need to breathe right now and listen to what's around me. And
That's right.
you talking right now, I'm like, wait a minute. This is all perfect timing.
I don't want to get too far flung with a sideways subject,
Oh
but
yeah, sorry.
this is important, so. And I had an experience where in the months that sort of tumbled into the past, I don't know, 9, 10, well beyond just this calendar year, there's one practice that's kind of like the central, like whirling dervish thing that I do, right? There's many, many ways that I air quotes practice, but it's really to be like you experienced in the airport, to live every moment as an opportunity to slip back into the groove. But this one practice that I do that's a moving meditation to a particular track, it's what my body loves most, and it's kind of like what makes my engine hum. And when I was physically in much more pain and discomfort with chronic illness, I did that practice every day like my life depended upon it. And as soon as the supplements I was taking started to give me more energy, I found I was less attracted to doing it every day. And I began skipping because I wasn't turning toward it because it's so uncomfortable. And then it was like, the day would pass and I'd be like, that's the second or third day in a row that I'm right. So I'm going to be treating the class from my own perspective of like, what do I want to commit to for the year ahead? So yes, yay, check that out.
The connection, all that to say is whatever, exploring spiritual practices, it can be different for you, and it can be small and easy. It doesn't have to
That's
be
absolutely right.
a big thing.
And
Yeah.
one last thing about this class. I'm not teaching some, deep discipline, do this, for 6 hours. I'm teaching everything that I know about breath and meditation and mysticism. So it's more like going to a buffet than, a big heavy meal. That's all I want to say about that. Let's do a quick question. So this question that I got from Paula also reflects a theme that I've been talking a little bit about these days, which is sort of like what astrology is and what it really can't do or shouldn't be, applied toward. So here's Paula's question. Hi, podcast question. How would you describe astrologically, or how do you experience personally, I'm glad she added that, solar flares or storms like we are currently having? Also, similarly, the lunar tide pull. Hope I have not missed previous discussions on this. Ever curious and wishing you all the best, Paula. We've talked about everything before, and things that we haven't talked about, I don't know that we haven't talked about, and I never remember. So the reason why I was attracted to this question is because it lets me speak to a larger picture of like things that astrology is and isn't, can do, can't do, should be used for, shouldn't be used for. One of the things that interests me the most about consciousness in a modern day is that roughly 50 years ago, we discovered the math behind chaos and randomness. And before the 60s and 70s in the math world, well, I shouldn't finish that sentence because it would. That's the sentence that someone who's a mathematician could finish, and I'm pretending that I have some fucking authority about maths, and I don't. But I do know that we didn't understand a randomness and chaos until the math was sort of discovered that described it. So now we have fractals that look like, the patterns of mountain ranges or the randomness of spots on cows. And it's not an unfolding plan with tree branches or mountaintops. It's a chaotic unfolding that now science has some basic understanding is that there's a pattern in the chaos, but it's not the same kind of patterning as I'm going to call geometry unfolding. So life is a little bit like that. There's a divine unfolding plan, a kind of sense and an arc of where your life started, where it goes to in the middle, and where it ends. Astrology is like the code that describes the pattern of shifting energy that can be counted upon. Like, I don't know if Thursday's full moon last week did this to you or that to you, but I know that the sensation and the feeling and the energy of that full moon was everybody was feeling the same thing. Chaos and randomness can't be codified by a system that looks like cycles that unfold in a more organic way. It's described very well by a pendulum. If you put a pendulum in a vacuum and just have it move, it will simply do a binary, 1, 0, left, right. It'll forever swing in this predictable pattern. If you add a third weight to the pendulum, so there's now not just the shaft with the pendulum piece, there's a second one with another one below it, and now the system expresses chaos. And we now understand that, but we don't see it as tick-tock, we see it as chaos. So, weather, same thing. Astrology can't predict weather or earthquakes or any of the chaotic random events. There might be a larger cyclical unfolding of the earth getting too hot down there and then moving tectonic plates in an earthquake. But there's no telling when that earthquake will happen based on, like, the Julian calendar. So yeah, like when the rain, one of the last hurricanes hit, I was asked, well, can we look at, the chart of Jamaica as an example? And it's like, weather, it cannot be described by astrology. I had someone reach out who was asking if astrology was reflecting all kinds of people who hadn't, like, done the work, air quotes, getting their due. And I'm like, well, not astrologically. I mean, people do shitty things all the time, and sometimes they get called out for it. And I don't think astrology says, oh, if you have some, higher consciousness right now, it won't happen. But if you're operating at a low vibe, you're going to be held accountable. I think that's a wish, because I think a lot of us, especially on the progressive side, have a lot of wishful Schadenfreude desires. But the last thing I want to add to this is the way people will often add a fearful idea to what I might say about a particular day's astrology. So, like, if there's a challenging friction and then someone says, oh no, I'm going to be doing this or that on that day, I want to remind you that that day and the friction that is calling it forth is already operating. So if I say friction and you have an event, remember that events require friction, right? You don't turn your car on and combustible engine flip on and move you through space without friction. The fire's friction, the wheels are friction, turning left and right is friction. So none of these things can be predicted or described by astrology. And when you hear the math of a day, remember to include it with and as what you have planned, instead of fearing that the planets are going to punish you and give you a bad day. So on Wednesday, Neptune is going to turn around and go direct. Now, he did not get very far back into Pisces. He's only at like 29 degrees, 22 minutes. So that's not even a whole degree, but it is him in his ruling sign. And it's interesting to me that he didn't go far back enough into Pisces to be hitting anybody's charts in any really big way, unless you have something like my poor son at 2957 receiving an inconjunct. But it is interesting that in such a profoundly and powerfully creative, chaotic, explosive time, that with all of the outers changing and knitting back and forth between the signs they were in, where they're going to, and now back in before they spring us into next spring, it's elegant that the planet that represents the inspiration and the consciousness that can connect us to unity is in the mastery degree that is, and we are all one. See, at that last degree of Pisces, the 30th degree, we're in the void of the void, the darkest moment of the end of the cycle of consciousness that then bursts into Aries. At 0 Aries, we call this the birth canal of the zodiac. So Pisces as a sign contains the consciousness of the 11 signs that preceded it, and that's why we can say Pisces rules all of the sort of unconscious material that we float in, the collective of everybody's consciousness. Pisces can contain that because it contains Aries, blah, 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 through Aquarius. So replicate that inside the dynamic of 0 Pisces to the 30th degree of Pisces, and now you have that same theme taken to the richest, deepest place possible. The 30th degree of the entire zodiac is the point that says there's only one of us here, and then you as an individual jump out of that void, scream, I am, and that's the consciousness of Aries that kicks off the whole frickin' thing to begin with. This little elegance is a synchronicity, right? It's not an astrological principle that's being expressed so much as whenever I use that word, whenever I use the word elegant, I'm talking about something like this that says, look at the wink, wink, nod, nod way the planets tell the ongoing, unfolding story. And Neptune, who's carrying the inspiration behind everything, is telling the story right now that unity is possible. It's the way we're constructed. He's been retrograde for a little bit, and now he turns direct, saying, aha, I've touched it. I've touched the idea of unity enough that now I can face Aries again and help the world light itself on fire, but maybe not so. I was going to say not so much of a burn, but no, next year's going to be a burn. But we have the nugget of peace for humanity in our psyche right now because of Neptune's movement. Now, Neptune won't change signs until I think it's like February 27th is my date that's in my memory. So we have a little while. We have between now and then where the planet of our connection to unity and oneness is at that beautiful 30th degree. So spend all your sort of internal time between now and then vibing with what's available there. And Uranus is still retrograde, will go direct at the end of winter. And I think Jupiter, who's retrograde, will go direct in the spring. And so at the moment, only Uranus and Jupiter are retrograde. So the drag backwards ends with Neptune turning around on Wednesday. It's a very big week for Mercury wrap-up. So this is part of why I was thinking about the shit show of personal planets as I was, putting together my outline for today's podcast, is that while Mercury is thankfully direct, it is interesting that in this 1 week, just between, if we count yesterday through Saturday ahead, Mercury is wrapping up 4 of his triple transits, which means it's a week where each day almost will have things that arise that might have tethers to October and November. Now, if I didn't mention Mercury trining Saturn yesterday in last week's podcast, shame on me. But yesterday, Mercury trined Saturn. Now, that's a very stabilizing transit, right? It's the flow of a trine and the ease of the 120-degree angle. And so to have three of those within this Mercury retrograde cycle has been beneficial. It's a boon to us, even if there were other ways that Mercury was kicking your ass, like he was me. This trine gave, I'm going to say purpose, because Saturn sometimes brings that, but I'll just say stability and the capacity to make something valuable out of the thought exchange that's happening inside your head the last few months. Look back to, all of these go back to the late bits of October. So this particular one was October 25th. And then while backwards, November 22nd. So the storyline here, if you want to get nitpicky on the specific day of the 25th and November 22nd, look for hints that looked like something was an important lesson or some way in which you were being asked to take responsibility for something that you are now maybe ready to do. Now, the full moon of November 19th, that was an ass-kicking full moon, smack dab in the actual full moon, moment. Mercury was opposing Uranus and trining Neptune at the same time. Mercury and Uranus are related through mind. Mercury is mind in our head, and Uranus is the higher octave of mind. So an opposition between the two has value because it's about insights, sudden ideas, conversations that change things radically and quickly. But, Uranus knows no distinction of what we would call good or bad or happy or sad or I want that, I don't want that. Uranus just brings the sudden and unexpected. The trine to Neptune is yummy. It connects our thoughts to creative inspiration and the divine at the same time that we're being, I don't know what the right word would be, stimulated somehow. Because it was a full moon, it'll be easy to look back at the full moon and say, okay, what was going on with mind, thought, conversation, inspiration that might have also connected to the very end of October? Those two transit hit on the 28th and 29th of October, so not quite exactly at the same time, but, less than 24 hours apart. So as we were ending October, we might have gotten knocked on our ass a little bit by something that was coming up through your voice or your thoughts. But it may also have allowed that full moon to drop something, heavy duty in the world of mental patterns that aren't serving you, patterns of thought that connect to deservability and love and Venus stuff. So that Mercury and Venus and Mars working in tandem through these crazy months to help us let some shit go. And the fact that these two Mercury transits were directly part of that full moon, you definitely want to look to Wednesday and Thursday of this month as these two transits wrap up again. Wednesday's the opposition to Uranus, so hump day might be a little zippy with things that you are talking about or negotiating or thinking about. And then the following day, Thursday, the trine to Neptune wraps itself up. But don't think of these as separate. I'm just giving you the dates because that's when they're exact. But really just think end of October, full moon in November, Wednesday, Thursday of this week. Same time frame, but not quite clicking into the exactness. It's something that happens on Saturday as we move through a kind of integration moment where Mercury will sextile Pluto. This is like power and persuasion and intensity in the voice that can really be very productive and valuable. And this hit on October 30th, so part of the late October trigger. It hit 2 days before the full moon was exact on November 17th, but just think of the whole middle of November as the inner dive that would have included a kind of promise of integration and more power if you allow the shifts that Mercury was taking us through. And then there's like the wrap up of the final moment of like the mind being good with a level of intensity and power in the voice as we move into Saturday and beyond. We're going to benefit from the personal planet shift that's happening on Sunday because Mars is going to move out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn Sunday night. Now, one reason why we will benefit is that Mars in Sagittarius is going to be responding to that mutable fire scatteredness. So even though it's Jupiter's sign and Jupiter brings joy and Mars is, the planet that can generate behaviors and actions that can get us in touch with joy in that sign, the other chaos has just made Mars's passage like adding a layer of distractibility or overwhelm from too many thoughts and ideas crashing in. So while Venus was doing all of her deep healing stuff, Mars in Sagittarius wasn't doing us any favors. In Capricorn, he's exalted. He loves it in this sign. Saturn's sign of structure is a great place for the builder to be, right? So Saturn is the contractor, but Mars is the guy who does the work. Now remember, every personal planet that's changing signs is going to touch the outers and in both the end of the sign they're in and in the new one, where they will hit Pluto. This is going to happen next year with every personal planet ingress. What made the last few months so hard is they were happening at the same time. And this is sort of the first moment that breaks away from that rhythm. And I like that it's Mars and that he's moving into territory where we will be clearer about what we want to accomplish, more capable of adding discipline and responsibility to our actions. Before we get there, this week, Mars is going to touch everybody else, or at least Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, on his way out. Today, Mars is squaring Saturn. That's a brakes on moment if there ever was one, right? That's classic delay, slow down, things that you plan with your body bump into the dead end wall on a day when Mars is squaring Saturn. Now, the weekend is going to be interesting with Mars because on Saturday, Mars will inconjunct Uranus on his way out of Sag. Then on Sunday, he'll square Neptune. And then by the evening hours, he leaves Sagittarius altogether. The combo of those two energies could be a little risky. Think of driving fast, right? Mars and Sag, driving fast. An inconjunct with Uranus is that moment where the other car comes up and goes vroom, vroom, and wants to do a little street fight with the cars, and both schmucks decide to do it. But then the next day, the square to Neptune is, what they don't know is they're about to turn, left into a bank of fog on a cliff. Now, that's hyperbole, that's drama, that's me using my fun, exaggerating language, but not the sensation. Like, I'm not making that up. Mars inconjuncting Uranus means sudden and unexpected track changes. And that can be as innocuous as there's a detour and you've got to drive way out of your way to get where you want to go. But it could also be the vroom vroom car next to you, itching for a fight. Now, Mars squaring Neptune has much more shadow potential. And the two together could really, exacerbate each other, that the sudden, shift with a mutable fire Mars could absolutely have the unexpected thing really throw you for a loop energetically or physically. And then Mars square Neptune is like cannot see, blind spots everywhere. Now, every transit has positive aspects or power or things that we can sort of glean from the energy. And this one, not so much. Like, I can think of one sort of template of if you have to face something that needs both like force and sensitivity at the same time. Like the bouncer has to remove the drunk person without escalating the fight, but can't not manhandle them out. Right? So both sensitivity and force. That's a very dark image. I'm sure that there's like softer, lovelier things that this energy is good for. But understand that this is also going to have people feeling, indecisive, not feeling clear about what's, happening in a day where beliefs and ideologies are causing fights left, right, and center. That could be, peppering all over the place over the weekend that's coming. At any rate, once Mars moves into Capricorn Sunday night, we're sort of good to go with Mars and the outers because he's right next to the sign that Pluto's in. So yes, he'll make a geometrical connection to Pluto in a couple of days, but it's the semi-sextile, the 30-degree transit that we never talk about, but it is a transit of like intimacy where the two players are utterly sort of different but comfortable as long as they stay 30 degrees apart. Right, like the neighbor you hate, but you wave at them across the fence.
As long as they stay.
Like, you stay there. Yeah, you stay there. Hi. So what that means for us energetically is that Mars is telling us, though we might move through some challenges with his changing signs as he leaves, once he gets in there, he's good with the change. That's the message of the semi-sextile with Pluto is, I'm okay, though the world is falling apart, around my feet. My feet are solid, at least. So the shit show continues. Next week, the sun has to leave Sag and move into Capricorn. And Venus and Mercury will be putting us through our paces as well. So yes, lots of squeezes and change, but it's in service of what we're trying to create on the planet, getting us all ready to be sort of more facile, capable, and ready to meet the changes ahead. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email and dream from Min. Okay, Min says, thank you for your wonderful podcast. I listen at the beginning of each week and gauge my entire week based on that.
No.
I love the dream interpretation segment and find it super insightful for understanding my own dreams because of the connections you make.
Love that.
I would love to hear your take on mine. This is an early morning dream that was fresh in my mind as I was waking up, and it felt like something I should remember because of its significance. I was at a party and it was a nighttime party. And it was a nighttime party. I did not know the people at the party, but they were apparently rich, which I could gather from the expensive clothes they were draped in. And it seemed like they may be looking down on me or behaving in a way that suggested that I was a non person amongst them.
Mm.
I was just there and did not care about them ignoring me. I remember seeing some friends at the party, after which I was more involved with chatting with them in the dream. Suddenly, the dream turned out to be about unpacking old purses and laptop bags that had carefully packaged home cooked food inside, which was no longer safe for eating.
Oh.
The food did not stink or look rotten or gross. It just seemed to have been packed for bringing back home from, like, a friend's party and was then forgotten. There was a ton of food that I was removing from my bag, and at one point I saw the pile next to my kitchen sink, and I found myself wondering in the dream why I had not realized that that food hadn't been taken out. I couldn't believe I had just forgotten about it. And that's it. That's the dream.
Wow. Okay. I love
I
this.
feel like we have not had this image yet.
Truly, yeah, I would agree. I would agree. All right. Indeed, dreams that happen in the early morning are more memorable. The REM cycle is longest and the last time we hit a sleep cycle. And, in my belief that dreams are for us and that the unconscious is like working with us, while this is certainly not scientifically provable, I believe that the unconscious has, purpose in sending us the most important messages when we're most likely to remember them. The fact that we're at someplace at night means it's a shadow dream. Now, it's a party, but let's get clear first that before we look at party, we look at nighttime to say, okay, whatever we're going to look at, it's what's hidden or scary or disowned or hasn't been, looked at yet is going to happen in a dream that has overt shadow implications. And nighttime is the strongest, most overt, obvious indication that you're in something to explore in the hidden places. Now, party could have lots of implications. And party with rich people can have lots of implications for our current moment, right? It's like, so we don't know if we're talking about rich people that's sort of like a cultural or communal sense of, difficulty fitting in because of shame or, the idea of people looking down on her in the dream. Or are we talking about billionaires who are, yachting and eating people for a living? And because both are here for me as I receive the dream, though we have clues as to what we really want to focus on, because so much about how the dream unfolds has to do with connections, people making connections, right? Where in the beginning, she's a non-person, right? So that, granted, I could go the the sexual abuse groomer non-person consciousness that we're having to face looking at all of the stuff that's being exposed. But it feels to me like it's about, I can't connect over here, but I can over here, right? Where she sees friends, right? So that to me tells me, at least in the beginning, the dream is about, where do I connect? Where do I find my tribe? I certainly don't find it here. Now, the here can be anything that Min decides that it is. In the dream, it's about mostly the clothing. There's also something juicy about her choice of words, draped in. Draping is luxurious and slow, right? So there's a prosperity thing to the idea of clothes that are draped. which is very different than clothes that are shoved on so you can chase after your 3-year-old and get to the store and. So Min gets to decide how rich these rich people are, right? What is she comparing herself to in the outside world? But some social construct or cultural or history construct is in Min's, psyche at the moment, saying, out here where I don't feel like a person and I can't make connection, I then get to see where I do make connections. I saw some friends, right? So that's where we're in something more, well, like the counter. Like I look over there and it's not, so I look over here and it is. But it's small, right? What does she say about the group? They're chatting.
Oh, she ends up seeing a couple friends at the same party. So first,
Right. And then when she chats with them, was she qualifying it at all? Okay. Got it. So in this case, if the party is the joyful movement through life, then that moment of connecting to her friends in the dream, where now she's willing to participate in the party, that's what her words tell us. Now I'm ready to participate as long as I feel connections, friendships. But then we get to all of this. Min is not nurturing herself.
Yeah, it immediately cuts to...
It cuts to, I'm not
unpacking.
remembering to feed myself, right? The purse suggests as she moves about the world in every aspect of her life, right? The purse is a symbol of your access to tools for living, right? For, people who only carry wallets, it's the same kind of symbol, but in the spirit of hunter-gatherers, the hunter has the wallet and the gatherer has all the stuff that they might need in a very sort of feminine leadership kind of way, right? So the fact that purses were a source of this discovery means as she tries to move about the world in every way, there's nurturance that hasn't been consumed. And then the laptop case has got to have something to do with like work obligations and things that might also take her away from self-care and nurturing and support. And that's where it's like, first of all, she starts by saying it's like home-cooked food. Like that's very different than like McDonald's or microwavable, right? She says home-cooked food. So now we know wherein she's been carrying around her inability to really nurture herself, home-cooked food, and might also be exploring ways that her group of friends or people with whom she connects to out in the world might also be not serving or nurturing her. That's, again, for Min to decide. It doesn't have to be there unless Min says so, because it's her dream. But I see that it's possible. And I could also see that the fact that there's a laptop there might be speaking to some kind of, work-focused reason for, feeling disconnected from self-care, like too much over. Yes.
It's actually just a laptop bag, not a laptop.
No, right. But if the bag is a laptop bag, then the symbol includes laptop consciousness.
Okay.
Right? Because it's like it's she didn't say grocery bag, right? Yeah. The fact that it's a laptop bag means something about however she relates to the computer, taking her away from self-care and nurturing, which might, looks a little like I was going to say alcoholism, but workaholism or some focus that keeps her from nurturing and sustaining herself. Now, does she say anything about how she gets home? Or my memory is that she just is there.
Yeah, she's
that
just
the
there.
Removing finds her. Now, that's interesting to me because in a home, the kitchen is the symbol of heart and lungs. We go to the kitchen just as blood goes through the heart and lungs to be fed and warmed. So the sink is sort of the feminine principle of the flow of water, the nurturing capacity of being able to have water flowing right there where you are. in a modern world, it's also where the garbage disposal is, where she might be like getting rid of all of this food that doesn't smell but still is not consumable. So she's kind of like in some very intimate place of self-care where even the sink is like, I'm not feeding myself because she's not at the stove or the refrigerator. So she ends up in a place in the kitchen that the only thing you can do with that place in the kitchen and food is to get rid of it. So that puts the final scene of the dream into a very, very intimate place where Min is in a very intimate consideration of how she's feeding herself. And then the question is fabulous. Why didn't I remember I had all that food? She doesn't say, why didn't I know? Because she already knew.
Yeah.
Right? If she had said, why didn't I know? That would be like, honey, because you've got to learn a little bit about, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. But because why didn't I remember says, I knew this. Why have I let this go? So, Min, you get to fill in all the details that resonate with what's going on in your waking life when you had this dream. But I trust the structure that we've given you to take a look at what it might be reflecting.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.